everyone. This is now episode 4 of Up the Waterfall.
Hello.
A Zanna podcast with Zanna and Scott.
That's right.
And Christian is here as well.
The producer.
Our faithful engineer. This week we are talking about a controversial topic, perhaps, for some people. The top 5 worst Disney rides of all time. And we are specifically saying rides because we know Disney calls everything that's not a restaurant or a store an attraction.
They do.
But we're kind of like trying to weed those shows and things like that out so we can just narrow it down.
Yeah. It's going to be tough to keep it to 5, but we'll do our best.
I think you're going to go over by a few, but that's okay.
Probably.
This is probably going to be mostly the Scott show.
No, I think it'll be both. I know you've got some things to clear up.
We'll have some asterisk points.
Many asterisks.
As well for things that may not be the worst or always have been the worst, but are now the worst.
They might be on the list, but not the worst. Asterisk.
Well, you'll just have to listen and see what all of that means. Do you want to start or you want me to jump right in?
How about you go for it?
Okay. Well, I have to narrow down. We're going from least to most worst. If that's I don't know if that's the proper grammar, but that's what we're doing. So we'll end with the absolute worst.
Okay. I'll try to do that.
Which is hard for me because I want to talk about my worst right now, but I'll wait. So I will start with then the Enchanted Tiki Room at Magic Kingdom, which was not all the time, but when it was under new management. Of course, we all remember that terrible time.
That was a dark moment.
Yeah,
yes.
You probably know specific dates and things like that, but
I don't know the dates. I do remember
it was in the 90s at some point, right?
There was an unfortunate thing that happened on my very first time that I saw it. The first time I saw it was the day Phil Hartman died.
Oh.
And he was the voice of one of the pre-show birds.
That's right, yeah.
So that was a weird time for me.
I have the dates if you want to.
Okay, yes, we're getting an update. Please hold on. Yes, go ahead.
The ride ran for almost 13 years, from April 1998 until January 2011.
Wow, that was a long time of me not going to that ride then. Or attraction. I guess it's not a ride, it's an attraction. So I'm already breaking rules here.
That's okay. We'll put a little asterisk in there.
This is the problem, is I have not been to as many parks as you have. So you have more to pull from, although the international parks,
there's not a lot from the international parks.
They're not known for.
They do them better out there.
So yeah, I've already broken the rule. Sorry about that. But
no, that's why that one wasn't on my list.
Yeah,
and that's fine.
Okay, well.
But that's a good one because if I had included that, that would have been on there.
We'll pretend it's a ride.
Yeah, that's okay. We make the rules.
So. Yeah, it was not a good... No. Because it is such a classic. It's one of the originals at Disneyland. It's one of Walt's
favorites, too.
Yes. And when you think of, the origins of animatronics, that is certainly where they started, when Walt saw a little mechanical bird and decided that he wanted to see if he could make that work.
That's right. He got it. He took it, brought it to his Imagineers and said, hey, look at the mechanics of this and let's make this a thing. And essentially that was the creation of audio animatronics. So that was it opened in Disneyland in 1963. That was a classic attraction. It's still going strong.
Now, do you know, because my memory is not the best anymore, before it was under new management, were the ones in Disneyland and here pretty similar?
Yes, they were fairly similar. They had different pre-shows. Both very, very good, actually. I remember enjoying both.
Always the best one, though. Sorry.
Yes, and they've since restored that pre-show to its former glory, and they've actually now the Disneyland one is they're only lacking the one song from the original. I can't remember the name of it, of course, because I'm trying to think of it. The Offenbach song.
Oh yeah, that one.
Which I really liked. But that's the only difference from the original to Disneyland. And there are quite a few cuts here in Florida.
Yeah,
now.
because even when they brought it back, it was not. They didn't bring back the fountain.
Yes.
And
They still have the fountain in Disneyland.
in Disneyland, but not here.
Right.
Which I mean, I remember being a child and being fascinated by that fountain going up so high and
I know, me
going
too.
with the music, and it really was.
But we're actually talking about the good parts of the thing that
Well,
we
I
like,
think
and not
that's-
the bad parts about the show that we didn't like.
And that's what's going to happen, I think, a lot, because most of the things on my list were things that used to be a favorite
Yeah.
and were then altered so much that they became one of the worst ones.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
it's hard knowing, because a lot of people nowadays from Christian's age and younger don't know anything but the imagination that, and we'll get to imagination.
But yeah, to go back to that show, I mean, it actually started the same way as the original, but then that's when Iago comes in, Iago from Aladdin, and interrupts the proceedings with his very loud, garish voice. And even, the show even kind of makes fun of its old self about how boring it used to be.
Yeah, which
is sad.
Yeah.
I do remember times at Disney World when guests would literally get up in the middle of the show and walk out, and that really was a tough time. Even in the original. So
yeah.
So I guess that's kind of why they did that. But
That's the thing too, is there are many different types of Disney fans, and I think I've had to make peace with that fact a lot of times, because not everyone cares about the history, and not everyone cares about what used to be and why this attraction was created a certain way. They just want to be entertained now, or they want to be thrilled, or something like that. So it's
That's right.
I get that it's difficult for the powers that be at Disney to figure out if they want to get people more interested by doing something edgy like that,
which it definitely was,
or changing something that is so beloved. So yeah, it wasn't a good time. And when Christian said the dates, I couldn't believe it was that long. But I literally never went after a few times of going.
I did a few times, although I never enjoyed it.
Yeah,
it was very crass.
Mm-hmm. Not
So
that we can't take a good joke.
No, sure, but I definitely enjoyed it when they brought back the original.
Yes, and that was a strange time when it came back too, because there was like a fire inside,
right.
and everyone thought that
right.
it was set on purpose.
Maybe that was sabotage.
Yeah, but when I think everyone jumped for joy and cheered when it came back to its somewhat former glory.
That's right.
So yeah, that was my number 5 on my list of not following directions. But do you have?
That's okay. I'm going to go
number
down my
5?
list. I actually did not put mine in kind of an order, so I'm just going to kind of go around the horn. And this may not be the best or the worst, but here's one.
It's all subjective.
I don't know if this was on your list, but one of mine was the Discovery Riverboats. Uh-oh. Is that on your list?
No.
Uh-oh.
Go ahead.
The Discovery Riverboats in Animal Kingdom. I'm wondering, is it because you really like them?
I loved them, and it makes me very sad and upset when they are on people's, because I've seen them on YouTube and things like that before, saying they were the worst because people didn't know. Was it a ride?
That's the thing. It was very misunderstood.
Is it a transportation? But I didn't care. It was a boat had fun things to look at, and I loved it.
The things to look at were few and far between. I enjoyed it too, but it was a ride that really didn't know what it was, both from, I think, the Imagineers' perspective as putting it together, and also, I think, the guests' interpretation of it. There were 2 landings, one right before the bridge to Dino Land, and then the other one is across the way from the Burge show. And so some called it transportation, to get from one point on Discovery Island or to the other, but I don't, it's hard for me to think that was the case. And so if that were the case, if it was not transportation, then it would have to be for entertainment purposes. and they're really, although it was beautiful, always love a good boat attraction. There just were not a lot of things along the way. But I mean,
I know they originally had planned for more things
Yes.
to be, back when, what is that? Mythical land was going to happen.
Yes, Beastly Kingdom.
Beastly Kingdom, which, there's rumors that never was going to happen. It was just.
I think it was on the drawing board, but it never really went farther than that.
Yeah. But again,
I'm sorry.
truly loved it, and I was very sad when it became like a weird
it
character thing
became
afterwards,
they
and
did
then a
all
Radio
kinds
Disney
of
thing.
yeah they did different iterations, and that's the thing. People got into these lines thinking it was transportation, and then were upset that the lines took so long, and then when they got to the other side they were like, wait, I waited in line for what?
Well, I mean, that's guest
it,
error.
yeah,
But
well, that's the thing.
I get
It was a combination of guest error and I guess operator error too. They really didn't know what to do with itself.
I'm trying to think of something that would be similar to that people,
I mean, you could say the monorail at Disneyland.
which is listed as an attraction.
I find that to be an attraction. Or even the railroad.
Even the railroad. I mean, I go on that to enjoy the railroad, not to save steps. I mean, maybe back in the day when I had small children, I remember taking the train from Main Street because we wanted to go to Mickey's Starland or whatever, Mickey's Birthday Land. I don't know what it was back at that time. But most of the time it was just to enjoy the train. But again, this goes to like different types of guests, and
I enjoyed it myself too, but it was just I guess the lines were too long because people didn't quite know what to make of it.
It was misunderstood.
It was very misunderstood.
But
They
I
did
will
have
love it forever.
They did have the one animatronic dinosaur around
Yes.
the one bend, which was fun. Kind of the same guy that was in Countdown to Extinction.
Yeah. Was that the same exact one?
Not the same exact one, but it was kind of in that realm. And then I remember when they got out into the lake that is now in front of Expedition Everest, they kind of went out there a little bit just to kind of give people more of a view.
Yeah.
But that was before Expedition Everest was even there.
I have photos of the boats somewhere that I was going to post on Twitter a long time ago.
But as I was
couldn't
saying,
find them.
at one point they actually, since they didn't quite know what to do, they had the Radio Disney tie-in, and then at one point they brought in animal
little
carriers
critters
who they would have little critters in a case that they would
tarantulas
show
and
around.
whatnot. I wasn't a fan of that either, but
Just because they're trying to add things
Right.
to
I was
get
like,
people
I just want to enjoy the boat ride. Leave me alone, please.
Yeah. So yeah, that one was kind of on my list only because of that. So I enjoyed it.
I know a friend of yours is going to be sad to hear.
Well, no, I don't think he will be sad. He understood what it was all about.
All right.
You go ahead.
That leaves me to my next one. Let me see here. Okay, well then, of course, next on my list would be Stitch.
Ooh.
Stitch's Great Escape.
That's okay.
Yeah, because there's a lot of Stitch.
Well, Stitch
things.
is at the Tiki Room in Tokyo, but that's actually a fun
I've
show.
heard that is a well done, and
Yeah.
Stitch has a lot of presence there in general, right?
A little
There's
bit more
a few
so,
more things like.
but primarily that. But yeah, Stitch's Great Escape.
So when I remember, I think I was still working at Magic Kingdom when Alien Encounter they were doing like cast previews.
Yeah, I think
and
that was 94, if I'm not, or 93 or 94, or maybe 95.
Well, I was there in 95, so yeah.
Yeah, okay. Right around that time.
And I was too scared to go to the cast previews because I didn't know what to expect. I just heard it was like complete darkness and like the harness situation and all this stuff. So I had my mom go in and test it out, and she is not known for going on scary rides, I think she's been on Space Mountain once in her life, and my brother still has fingernail marks in his hands from being with her. Anyway, eventually, I guess that was the first, because the cast previews were when it was really scary. Like they toned it down a little.
Yeah, because
I don't remember what it was
well,
at this point.
There were parts where the alien would crunch down on someone's head. and their brains would come out, and you would feel that, which was very.
I guess that was.
That's
It was
and
still
they said
scary
that.
and gross. And
the thing about
version
that
that did come
attraction
out.
is if you bought into it, it was frightening.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, it
sincerely
really was
frightening.
pitch
And,
black.
yeah, and the harnesses are very intimidating. And
I used to go like push my shoulders way up, even when
Yeah.
I went on stitches, because I just didn't like that feeling. And then they would lock, and then I could move
Yeah.
down. So then when they bounced on you, it wasn't like as scary.
Because it was using surround sound technology that was so good that it was extremely realistic, and so the more you bought into it, the more frightening it was.
Yeah.
And I guess that's kind of what they were going for. And so if I may, that's kind of an asterisk on this list. I might even throw that on there
As being
because it's just so
one of the worst
frightening.
ones. Yeah, I guess.
I enjoyed it, but
I think it was a fun.
It was very. I got nervous every time.
Yeah, I mean,
But then,
I did. Once you knew what it was, I think
Sure.
I could go on it a lot after that. But then when they changed it, whatever year that was.
Well, I'm not sure, but we'll have our producer look
We'll,
that up. But we'll
we'll
talk
get back
about
to you on
Stitch now.
So yes, then they made it extremely, I guess, family friendly.
Yes, they definitely toned it down.
And I think that was around the same time frame of Stitch taking over the Magic Kingdom. Like that was their advertising campaign, and he like toilet papered the castle.
That was a little bit later, but
okay.
But in the same
This was
vein,
setting the
certainly.
scene for
Yes.
Stitch being like a crazy.
And that's the thing. Like in the movie, Stitch has kind of two personalities. He was that kind of rapscallion kind of a ne'er-do-well, but then he was also like a sweet puppy for Lilo, and it was that part that people grabbed onto and found very endearing from that movie, and so they kind of did a 180 on that, and it was the criminal Stitch that they had to imprison. So.
I'm like drawing a blank. Was the Skippy whole pre-show that Alien Encounter? Or
It was
that
both.
The Stitch thing?
They changed it from one character to another.
But Excess was
Excess Tech.
the Alien Encounter thing, right?
Yes.
Sees the future with Excess.
Yes.
Okay.
Whew.
I did really like the pre-show of Alien Encounter, but then the pre-show for the Stitch thing was still fun. Like it was a fun experience up until then.
Yeah, because he didn't get roasted as much, and he didn't get
Yeah.
kind of encapsulated into the nothingness.
I guess really the worst part of Stitch's Great Escape was that chili dog burp.
Yes, the chili dog burp.
I mean, that was reason enough for
which
me
you
not
could both
to
smell and
hear the burp.
feel.
Yeah.
You could feel it on the back of your neck and kind of taste it too. It was really gross. I guess kids liked it.
It was
but,
just like a lot. Like it wasn't something that I wanted to do on repeat ever.
Certainly not.
Because I don't know.
I mean,
it was just a letdown from
the
previous
animatronic itself was fascinating, and the little animatronic of the kind of the robot arms that kind of was guarding him. Those were
Yeah.
fascinating, but
that was fun.
but you still had the restraints that were very intimidating that
Yeah.
kids didn't like,
No.
and then Stitch, yeah.
Yeah.
So okay.
But I mean, and that of course was in the former Mission to Mars theater.
Yes, which was cute.
So
Mission
it will
to
be
Mars
interesting to
and-
see if they're just going to gut that or if it's going to become something else that keeps that
Yeah,
original.
because that was an
format.
original. I mean,
Yeah.
it wasn't originally Mission to Mars. It was the moon.
Flight to the
Actually
Moon.
Flight to the Moon. That was not opening day, but the opening year attraction, 1971. So it's been in that kind of form since that time.
There was no shoulder harnesses or anything
No,
back then, right?
not at all.
I have no memory. I do
Nothing like
remember
that.
going on the Mission to Mars one and just like the seats rumbling.
It rumbled, and that was it.
That was kind of, yeah.
It was fun though. It's not
but
on my
yeah,
list.
no, I don't think anyone misses Stitch's Great Escape, and we all look forward to what will replace it, I guess.
Yes.
So, what's next on your list?
Next on my list is an attraction that kind of devolved over time. That would be the Backstage Tram Tour
Ooh, I
at
didn't even
both
think of that.
at both studios theme parks around the world. That is Disney MGM Studios, which is now Disney's Hollywood Studios, as well as Disney Studios in Paris, that park. Which, anyway.
It's been improved upon, supposedly, recently, or it is
No,
in the process of being improved upon.
I think they're redoing the whole park. I think that attraction, if I can't imagine that's even still there.
The
The
Backstage
backlot tour.
Backlot
Or the
I never
backstage.
knew it was a thing until you just said that. So.
Yeah, it was.
My
Anyway,
Disneyland Paris knowledge
but
is
when
not.
when it first opened, the whole walking tour and tram tour was a multi-hour thing, and it really kind of gave you a behind-the-scenes look at how movies were made and a lot of effects that were used. But as the park itself kind of didn't have the productions that they thought they were going to have, well, it devolved over time, and both the walking tour and the tram tour kind of became shells of themselves. They did go through the houses, that they had the street, with
residential street.
Residential street, and it did go through the Catastrophe Canyon, which was a highlight back then, and so I'm no knocks against that at all. But it did have like the Boneyard, lots of old vehicles and things like that from productions that did happen there, and some. They had some from the Who Framed Roger Rabbit, as well as the third
Flight
Indiana
of the Navigator.
Flight of the Navigator. I was going to say also the third Indiana Jones movie. They had some from that, but there were a bunch that were like that people would think,
Yeah.
like the Blackjack one. I can't even remember the name of that one.
And that just got worse over time too.
Yeah.
As,
Well,
more and more kids came in and were like, "What movie is that?"
Yeah, and that's the thing. They back then, even the New York street was not a thing that people could walk on. It was part of Backstage, and so the tram would go on it, and they would. At one point, they even did a show on that as part of the tram.
Dick Tracy.
Part of Dick Tracy, right? When that came out in 1990. But as they use that street for public traffic, that kind of cut into where the trams could go, and so more and more kind of got lost. And then also when it went through that tunnel, which is where the costuming, but also the three studios, the creative costuming shop, as well as the three studios that were in there, where they filmed
things
like the lottery, but also where they filmed Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, the
Wheel of
old
Fortune.
what
Wheel of Fortune filmed there.
they had Let's Make a Deal. I know I was even part
when
of
Wheel
that.
of Fortune came to Florida, that's where they
I think they also had Star Search and all things like that, but they started using that less and less, and so there was less to see. And then when the Toy Story Midway Mania took over a couple of those studios, there was even less. So anyway, it just kind of devolved over time, and they tried to keep it going probably longer than they should have. And the same could be said for the one at the Studios Park in Paris. They had amazing things when that first opened. I know that there was a thing about that the Reign of Fire Dragons movie that they had. But then when I went to that park in the year 2012, they didn't do that anymore. And in fact, when I wrote it in 2012, I was wondering, like, why is this tour even here? Because it kind of did two back and forths through areas that there really wasn't a lot to do, a lot to see. So it was almost like, why? So, and then mercifully they finally ended it, and the one here has since been replaced by Toy Story Land and all kinds of other things. But that was an attraction that started out great and kind of lost its glory.
Yeah,
along the
I
way.
think that was sort of an allegory, if you will, for the the decay of Disney MGM Studios that we all knew and loved. Because when the park opened, everything sort of worked together and all related, and it was all old Hollywood that never was and always will be. And that was a big part of it, and it made sense back then. But I think very quickly over time, when it became just an attraction and not a working studio, it lost its luster
Yes.
quickly. So yeah, I mean, I guess you can call it the worst. One of the worst.
Well,
rides,
I
but
would say the
with
latter
the
version.
asterisks
And by the way, many of these attractions that we're listing have an asterisk. Please don't just say, "Hey, oh my gosh, they listed this attraction as the worst of all time," because that's not necessarily what
you
we're
can
saying.
if you want. We'll fight you on Twitter.
Yes.
Just kidding. Anyway, so
Please
okay.
proceed.
Next on my list is one of those same kinds of things, and people may not agree with me on this one, but I'm going to say the seas with Nemo and friends.
Ooh, interesting.
This is why I wore this shirt today.
Sea Base Alpha.
Sea Base Alpha, because, you know, going back to the original Epcot that we all know and love, and eventually we'll get to our Epcot special, which may be a two-parter or more,
or three,
because we have a lot to say about Epcot in its original form. I loved going to the Living Seas when it opened, and the whole experience of it when you went and watched the movie. So you got like a history, but it wasn't like boring history. It was like amazing, like in your face, really good quality.
And I would even say
time.
both the pre-show movie and the big sit-down
I
movie.
blocked out the pre-show movie.
That's
Sorry,
okay.
I'll have to watch that on
All
YouTube
of it was a good part of it.
But then, you know, the end of the movie when you get the image on the screen of the hydrolators, and she says, "Welcome to Sea Base Alpha."
Absolutely.
And the doors open, and there's the hydrolators right there.
Those were amazing.
Yeah. I thought for a long time that they actually moved, but then you went into the rest of the area when you got out of Sea Base or into Sea Base Alpha from the hydrolators.
That's
and
right.
It was all, it was educational. I was a child at the time, and I didn't find it boring.
But then they even had the little sea cabs.
They had the sea cabs. That's what I was getting to. But it was all like part of being educated about the sea and the living seas and what lived. And at the time, it was like amazing that they had made this man-made aquarium.
It was the largest at the time.
However many gallons, 2
more
million.
than 10. I'm not sure of the number. A lot.
And you could ride through and see it. And then when you got off the ride, you could go upstairs and walk around and see it from another level. And then, the dolphins or the manatees or whatever they had
all
in
of
there.
Them. They had both.
And then the little tidal pools. It was all, part of the living seas.
And then you took hydrolators to exit the attraction too.
Yeah, that's right. Wow.
Yeah.
I forgot about that. So anyway, I didn't think there was anything wrong with that personally, but
nope.
I get that Disney wanted to add in a little intellectual property of their own and make it exciting for kids. I mean, I think it did have a problem of not many people walked back that far to go to it. It was very rarely crowded there.
Right.
So I get it that they wanted to spice it up, and what better way to do that than, with characters that they owned.
And they did that both with that attraction as well as the submarine voyage at Disneyland.
Right.
And if you were to ask me, submarines, they had shut those down. And so it was essentially the Nemo characters that brought it back to life.
Yeah, so I guess
they were
we can't
grandfathered in. So we still have submarines out at Disneyland because of the Nemo characters.
Yeah.
And so I'm actually thankful for them for that. And I'm not trying to disagree with you here, but I'm saying it kind of
I get it.
They
and
did the same thing in both places, but to a different
I mean, if it
degree.
meant adding Nemo or shutting the seas down, I'm glad that they added them. I just think that it was fine the way it was. They certainly could have added a different element that would have, like where that play area is with the shark photo pass thing. And Turtle Talk, could have fit in there and done his own thing and not really disrupted the rest of learning about the seas.
Yeah.
But they added like that whole first half of the ride where it's just, like jellyfish and anglerfish and whatever. I mean, kids like it. I get it. But
I did not have it on my list. I very much enjoyed the Living Seas before that, but I I still find it all very enjoyable, and I'm okay with
Yeah.
the layover, with the Finding Nemo layover.
It's just kind of like weird and abrupt at the end.
Yes.
When it's just like, here's
well,
an
that
actual
is the
aquarium with
point.
real fish. in
I am
it.
very sad that we lost the hydrolators
Yeah.
and the movie, and that's kind of, since the ride is now a lot longer than it used to be. It took up the space of where that theater
Yeah.
was, so
So
it was
anyway.
a bad loss.
Yeah, that was on my list. You
That's
can,
okay.
get mad at me if you want.
I'm not mad. But I will say the next on my list is actually another one that came from Epcot. And you may or may not remember this, and I'm guessing maybe you don't. There was a ride that was very temporary called Journey to Jerusalem. Like, wait, what?
A ride
A ride
in Epcot?
in Epcot. It was in the Millennium Village.
Oh, okay. I think I only went in there one time during the
It was-
Millennium Celebration.
Yes, during the Millennium Celebration, they
I
were
don't know if
basically
I saw
trying to
it.
celebrate more cultures on Earth than just the countries that were represented in World Showcase. And so they opened up that World Showplace building. And many countries came in there and kind of had a small exhibit space, including what at that time was considered controversial, the Israel exhibit. Because Israel, as you know,
I think it still
is
is.
kind of there's a lot going on there. It is kind of the conflagration or where three different religions kind of call it their home. Both Christianity, Judaism, and of course Islam. And so when you have a ride called Journey to Jerusalem, is like, whose perspective is it going to be from? Because they don't always necessarily agree on the history of that place. So, but what it was a giant kind of a motion platform movie where they essentially just showed a movie on a screen, but the entire all of the seats were on a motion simulator, essentially. Not as wild as Body Wars or Star Tours or anything like that, but it kind of went through the undulations of kind of flying through that area. It was, and it was a temporary exhibit because it was only, I think it opened in 1999 and probably closed in 2001. Would be my guess, but so it was kind of temporary, and I did ride that one time, and it was interesting. But I thought I'd throw that one on there because it
you
was
really threw me for a loop there.
Yeah, I thought I might. Do you have anything to add on that?
I mean, I remember Jerusalem being in the Millennium Village, but
Yeah.
I really have almost no memory because I had just had Christian in 99.
And
so
because of the shape of the
was a little
building
busy.
and trying to get people in there, it was really very cramped. And each country that exhibited in there only had a very limited amount of space to essentially showcase their countries. And so it was all very weird. That was, I think, certainly the biggest one because they actually had a ride platform in there. But if you kind of think about the shape of the building and what they now use it for special events, it's kind of weird that they would have people go in there to see all of these different exhibits and come out. It was all kind of in a single path as well that kind of meandered its way through. So there you go.
All right, well, I will jump right in my next one
Please.
then. Keep things moving. I'm debating which one I wanted. I'll let you do the one that I haven't been to, so I don't feel right saying.
I think you should because I'm not going to.
Oh, well,
It would
okay.
be on my honorable mention
We'll
list.
do that. This is going to be an asterisk honorable mention because I haven't been on the ride. Have you been on the ride?
No.
Okay, so neither of us have been on the ride, but Superstar Limo has, of course, gotten the reputation for the worst ever ride.
That's what I've heard.
That I don't know how long it was around, but it wasn't.
It was
very
not
long.
around very long. My first visit to California Adventure, and by the way, it opened in February of 2001.
Oh, okay. You have the dates then.
February 8th of 2001, in fact.
Wow.
My first visit to the park
Is that
was in...
wrong?
No, I was gonna do you know when it closed?
Oh,
No. Well, I was going to say my first visit was in March of 2005. I'm sorry, no, March of 2003. So it had to have been before that time.
ah.
January 11, 2005. So
Wow.
not even a year.
January 11th, 2002. Wow. So it's just under a year that it lasted. But
Yeah.
you go ahead.
No, I mean, you can look it up on YouTube and see what the ride consisted of, but it is very un-Disney like in its, I think, design and
it was very
theme.
cartoony.
Yeah.
They essentially it's where the Monsters Inc. attraction is now at California Adventure. It essentially uses the same track, the same kind of ride vehicles.
Some of the things are even still there. They just have like a different suit on or something.
But instead of the Monsters Inc. characters, they essentially had lots of celebrities, but in weird caricature form.
Yeah.
And you would basically take a limousine ride through Hollywood.
Yeah.
But
And
I'm
it
not
was
sure what the
supposed to
point
be originally like paparazzi kind of thing,
that's right.
but that changed after Princess Diana's death.
Yeah.
So it was kind of cursed from the start.
Yes.
I
I really wish I could have seen that.
I mean, I don't know of anyone that has that on their top whatever lists of good rides. So
I don't think there are many. Maybe
that's a
Drew
quick and
Carey,
easy
but
one.
I'm not sure.
So yeah, since that was the asterisk, I'm just gonna go into
please.
my fifth one, and you can like do yours. We're going out of order.
Oh
now.
wait, is this your fourth or fifth?
Well, this will be my fourth then.
Okay. So that
And
was
they're all running together.
4A. This will be 4B.
Okay. So this is another one similar to, I guess, your Backstage Tour of like over time. And it's still, I feel bad putting it on, labeling it with the worst. But Kilimanjaro Safari in Disney's Animal Kingdom. I just miss the original storyline that went with it. And
That's a good point.
totally understand that they were trying to, over time legitimize themselves as animal, conservationists and just wanted to stick to the facts of like, this is what it would be like on a safari. And not have any of the kitsch involved. Not that it was kitsch, but
Oh, speaking of animals.
mystery cat. But Wilson Matua and
Warden Wilson Matua
Warden
and
Wilson Matua and Miss Johnson.
Miss Jobson.
Jobson, sorry.
Yes, that's
I
okay.
always
quote
got
And
that wrong.
Matua.
We quote this, and I don't even know if any of the kids were alive when that was still happening.
I
But
think
you
so.
can still see him in the opening,
Yeah,
like
in the
as you're
opening
waiting
credits.
right before you board the.
But you would hear
Jeep.
him in his plane going overhead several times during
and
the
there
ride.
and he was sort of like explaining things. So he was the tour guide along with your driver. And then Miss Jobson was learning about the safari along with you as you were learning about it. So she would call them Thompson's gazelles, and he would say,
She would call them, that's right. And then he would say,
And
they
he
are
would
they are Tommies.
"No one here calls them Thompson's gazelles. They are Tommies. Tommies."
Tommies.
Anyway, that's what it's like to live here. We do that all the time.
You should do more impressions of him.
No, we probably shouldn't. But also, I always remember there was one part. Try the red clay pits. That's
right.
probably the most common. Like when we're looking for something and we can't find it, we'll just say, "I have not seen him today.
I
Try
have
the
not-
red clay pits."
That's right.
I mean, that's just, we're stupid nerds, but whatever. There was this one part, I think right after the baobab tree, where the tour guide would be like, "Let me see what's on the radio." And then they would play this music, which I tried for years and years to figure out what that was. This was when the internet wasn't as well populated as it is now. So now, of course, you can figure out what that is.
You can find that.
I think it's African Dawn something. I forget if that was the name
I
of
don't
the
know the
song
name
or
of
the
it.
name of the group.
I do love it, though.
We'll find it and put it in the description because it is really pretty music. I don't know
Very.
if it's still available.
It is.
Okay. So then, of course, the other part of that was the fact that there were poachers. You had to grow eyes for poachers,
That's
be
right.
looking for them. And that's why you couldn't find Little Red, try the red clay pits, because they were looking for him so he didn't get poached by the poachers.
right.
And then you passed the little poachers camp, which is still there, which makes no sense because now it's just like, here's some elephant tusks, which looks terrible if you don't explain that was the poachers camp.
Yes.
I don't know
but
why
I mean,
they left that
it
there,
got
honestly.
pretty brutal
Joe Rohde,
because
please explain.
in the beginning, you went past the the corpse of Big Red.
Yes, that did not last
She
too
did
long.
not live through the
But,
attraction, and
yeah.
then at the end they
There
showed
was
that
an
Little Red was
animatronic
okay,
Little
but
Red in a Jeep.
but Big Red did not make it through the
Yeah.
initial thing, and there were actually several parts along the ride where they had carcasses, like bloodied.
Oh,
I remember
yeah,
there
that
was
didn't last
there was a bloodied
long at
zebra
all.
carcass
Yeah.
at one point that was very quickly taken away,
Yeah.
as well as on the walking tour afterwards. There was a point where you could see a carcass had actually been killed and dragged along the path, and then dragged up into a tree. I'm not kidding.
Jeez, I don't
And
remember
that was at the very beginning of the park, on the walking part of the tour, and because they really wanted it to be very realistic of
yeah.
how things
Joe doesn't
were.
shy away from
No,
nature.
But
Joe
there were
tells it like
many
it is.
many complaints from guests that they did not like to see
Yeah.
such dramatic real things,
Yeah.
and so those things were taken away, and eventually the carcass of Big Red was taken away, and then I guess there was an audio part where she is okay.
Yeah, yeah, that was added.
instead of showing her,
Mhm.
and then you would see the Little Red in the back of the truck.
Yeah.
But I mean, see, that is a controversial pick because that is my favorite attraction in that park.
I mean, it's still a great attraction
It's
on
a
its own. If you just walked on
fantastic
there now and you
attraction.
didn't know the history of it, except for that poachers camp, which I
Yeah.
think is
But that's a good point.
We
They
did it recently and didn't know that they still had all that stuff.
yeah. So I pointed that out when we were there for the Lion King
Yeah.
celebration. That like, if people don't know the history of it, they're just. I think if anything, it sort of normalizes the fact that elephant tusks are just hanging out there,
That's right.
and it doesn't, send the message that they want to send, like, "Hey, this is a terrible problem."
Mm-hmm.
So, for that reason, but it's still, obviously,
so
I still
don't-
like the ride. I
Yeah,
still
so don't
appreciate the whole thing.
Yeah, don't
but
go around telling everyone that we don't like that ride. We very much do like that ride, but it's
yeah, I'm not concerned that that's gonna happen.
well, I say
just
that
think-
because of we're gonna go down a line now where this is actually a thing because I'll go into my next one, which is Pirates of the Caribbean.
Oh yeah, I'm
Wait,
tweeting right
what?
now. Oh, Disney hates pirates.
But
of
I
the
don't
Caribbean.
hate pirates. Pirates of the Caribbean, specifically at the Magic Kingdom, is a great attraction. At Disneyland, it is a wonderful attraction, maybe my favorite. But it's what we could have gotten instead. It's kind of the history. Back when Magic Kingdom opened, they had grand plans to use that area by over where Splash Mountain and Big Thunder Mountain are currently for the Western River Expedition.
Yes, which we touched a little on that in the history of the D23 Expos because
That's right.
we had the models.
It
which
was
I
going to
posted
be
photos of on
a
Instagram.
huge attraction that was going to both incorporate the train that goes through that area, as well as there was going to be a runaway mine train part. There was going to be a boat ride, as well as another kind of the main ride, the Western River Expedition, where it was going to tell the history of cowboys and Indians along this gigantic plateau area. And it was kind of going to be the phase 2, if you will, of the opening of the Magic Kingdom. And Mark Davis was kind of the master designer behind all of that. And at some point, the powers that be, they said, maybe not. And, that's a traditional thing where things get cut. The plans may have been too...
grand,
kind of too
too
grand.
expensive.
Too expensive because it is the almighty dollar, and that was a tough time, the early 70s, in that way. There was a kind of a depression at the time. There was a gas shortage and that kind of a thing back then. So I guess guests were asking, "Hey, you have Pirates of the Caribbean at Disneyland? We really like that ride. Where is it here? Why do you not have it?" And
Or
so
in Florida, where pirates hung out.
And I guess the initial reason was because you're in you're in the East, right in the Caribbean. You experience pirates all the time, which is kind of weird. And so they've essentially fast-tracked to Pirates of the Caribbean. They did one essentially kind of on the cheap, if you will. it does have the one drop instead of Disneyland's two, which does have serve its purpose of going outside of the railroad tracks out there, and although this one does too, but it's just the one out at Disneyland is quite a lot more expansive, more detailed, has a lot more story to it.
And you get to go up the waterfall.
That's right, which provides the name of this attraction.
This attraction.
Of this podcast, which is an attraction for you all today.
We would call it an attraction.
This is the top
They
5
would.
worst attractions.
It is funny that you
podcast.
say that. As a quick aside, I noticed in the map when Hong Kong Disneyland opened that Tarzan's Treehouse is listed on the map as an attraction. And since it's on an island, they call the island that it's on an attraction. And since you have to take a raft to get to that island, they call that raft an attraction, when really it's all just one thing.
Well, I can see why they did that, though.
They even called photo spots attractions.
Oh, well, that's silly.
Yeah, they were trying to expand the number of attractions out
Yeah.
there. But anyway, that was a quick aside. The Pirates here is one of my favorite attractions at the Magic Kingdom. Please let it be known that I say that. I very much love it. I just am sad about what could have been, what we essentially did not get because of the Pirates of the Caribbean attraction here. So,
I guess,
asterisk.
yeah.
Thoughts?
I was going to say that they could read all about the differences in which one is better in full detail at Passport to Dreams.
Oh, that's right.
We'll have to link that.
There was a great article in Passport to Dreams, the blog, about kind of making a case for Florida's Pirates of the Caribbean.
And comparing, because there are
because,
some
yeah,
pluses
even
on
like
this side versus their side.
at the kind of the angles that the boats take kind of gives you a better perspective and on some of the tableaus in the ride, and kind of sets you up for the attraction better. It might approaches some of the audio animatronics in a it's closer to give you more of a storytelling. It's very detailed, and I encourage you all to check it out.
So if you're into all of these historical details and stuff like that, then
yes, that's a
we'll link that in the
fantastic
description.
website.
I mostly agree with that article.
Yeah?
By the way. Like almost to a T.
It's a very compelling case, I will say, and so I don't want to just completely trash Florida's version because I very much love and prefer Disneyland's because it is longer, has a lot of extra scenes, but the scenes that they both share, there is a case to be made for why the one in Florida is better. So please, asterisk.
All right, and that
one.
brings us to number 5. Yes,
That's
Or
right.
Number 1.
yes, that's
I
true.
think you said number 5 at the beginning.
That's right.
So we
It
have
doesn't
5,
really
4,
matter.
3, 4, 5.
And plus, I'm gonna
Okay,
have
well,
I'm gonna have
you
a
know.
ton of honorable mentions as well.
We're
so.
not the most organized, but we have a lot of passion. So my number 1 is, of
The
course,
No.
of course,
Oh, that's right.
Journey into Your Imagination.
Get him out of
Yeah,
here.
I think honestly this one has to be on the top of all lists.
Yeah. And if you don't know, which I'm sure everyone does, but if you don't know, this, I mean, you know probably the history more. Like Kodak wanted an upgraded attraction, yes? Or
I actually
was that
don't know
when
the
they,
history of all of that, of
okay.
why they changed it.
Well, I've
I
seen
guess it was
videos.
because they lost the sponsorship at one point.
I don't know if it was before or after that, but like I think it was Test Track had just happened, right?
Well, I know Test Track was originally supposed to open in '97, and it was on a 2-year
Okay,
delay.
so, yeah,
so
because
1999 is
Journey
when that
into
finally
Imagination
opened.
closed in '99, I
Okay.
believe.
Yeah, I think they had to keep it open while Test Track and World of Motion was
Yeah.
still closed.
So I think the story is, and I could be wrong, I will correct myself later if that is true. Kodak was like, hey, we want a more updated, fun attraction like Test Track.
Ooh.
And so then what happened was they ripped Figment out. They destroyed the Dream Finder and his dream catcher.
God, that was such a perfect ride.
It really was. And as many of you may know about me, that ride is literally, not literally,
No,
but
literally.
it is my childhood.
It really is.
And it is everything that I love and believe in is in that original ride.
It was flawless.
And I've told this story before on my blog and, many times I'm sure, but the first time I visited Epcot in 1983, that instantly became my favorite ride. And then our last day of our vacation, we were driving back up to Massachusetts, and I got on that ride for the last time, and I just sobbed uncontrollably the entire time because I did not want to leave Figment.
Oh my gosh.
And my mother, with her disc camera, was like, I'll take pictures for you, and took flash photos on the ride. So we have those somewhere if she didn't throw them out. I don't know. But it really was, I just was so attached to the entire thing. I'll save it for the Epcot episode. But to go from that, which no one was complaining about, yes, there was less attendance because, that's just how Epcot was at the time, I think. And there were other newer parks that were opening and offering different things and stuff like that. But anyway, so to rip that out and have no Figment at all and
that's
no
the thing.
like representation of the original ride or really imagination.
That's true. Because you could say a lot of people, they long for the original Horizons and World of Motion, and I miss both of those dearly. And a lot of people do not necessarily like Test Track or Mission Space out there. But you could at least say that what they took out, they put in something different. They had different plans to kind of trying to make it more exciting, and they went a different way. And whether it was good or bad, you could at least say, well, they tried something different. At Imagination, they essentially took a wonderful, perfect attraction, ripped it up, made it essentially 30% shorter, and essentially tried to put in the same thing, but worse in every possible way.
Yeah. There was portions of like complete darkness, and with that train coming towards you, which I guess was still there after the second update, but when it was first happening, it was a lot more alarming, I think.
Yes,
I remember
it was
taking a screaming child on that.
Yeah,
ride
so they made it so it was pitch black then, and it's not that way now. But
yeah,
and then they added Eric Idle.
And it was
a lot of they tried to put a lot of effects. Yeah, they threw in a reference or two to the Dexter Riley or the red tennis shoes. And that kind of thing. The old Kurt Russell movies or things like that. But that does not make up for the loss of both Dreamfinder and Figment.
Yeah, and it was really like an insulting ride because basically it was like, well, you don't have any imagination because they were checking you for your imagination and like
that's right.
Nothing showed up.
They scanned our brains and they found nothing.
Yeah, which was like, what?
Wow.
So it was terrible. And to think, going through, yes, it was like shorter, but you could still see like, oh, this is where this used to be. And that was just like heartbreaking because it was such a beautiful, beautiful ride.
If you think about the where the queue was, and when you first entered the ride, you went through that giant rotating thing where you had the talk with Dreamfinder about the creation of Figment.
The talk with Dreamfinder.
that whole part is gone.
Yeah.
Is not part of the new ride.
It's the queue.
It's part of the queue now. And that was a huge chunk of the ride. And if you think about like that white room,
I know,
with the rainbows.
Don't get me started.
Yeah, so it's very sad.
Yeah, and even just the mechanics of the original ride were fun to experience because you could see if you were like at the very end of the however many cars were in one section, like 4 or 5. You could see like, oh, there's going to be more cars, and you got the concept, and then you turned and you went into, and it was just like an amazing ride to experience. So
it really was.
On many levels, both, with the Figment and the Dreamfinder and the imagination and the beauty of the ride, it was also technologically fun to experience, and
I think
and the smells too.
Oh, that's true.
The rose scent of roses.
But I
that still
think
reminds me of
the
that.
new one has smells.
Yeah, you
Yes,
can
and-
smell a skunk.
But I think probably part of that is also the destruction of the ImageWorks. You could, you
I
couple
had
it.
that written down. Yes.
You essentially trashed the ride, but then also trashed the amazing thing that was at the end of the ride. And if you think about it, where ImageWorks even was just in those beautiful pyramids, where you went up to the second floor and got to essentially do an imagination playground up there.
It flowed perfectly.
It flowed perfectly. It was so many amazing creative things in a wonderful environment to be replaced by the other ImageWorks where they did not have as many things.
Yeah, it was just...
Some of which were even just trying to sell you like little picture-y
Oh, yeah,
things.
those like 3D etching cubes or whatever.
So.
But yeah, I
That
mean,
was a
why
sad
would anyone
thing.
ever think like, oh yeah, let's just take this rainbow tunnel out? I mean, I can get that some things, the technology had moved ahead. Like the
It
painting
had.
with Figment, I get it. They could have improved the software and kept the concept.
Or even the Dream Finder Theater with the green screen.
Yeah, I mean,
they could have improved upon that too.
I guess, but that does have Tony Baxter and Joe Rohde in it or something like that. At
Yeah,
least
Joe Rohde actually played
They-
Dreamfinder in that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he did. And then
That's right.
They did,
Oh, that's
a
right. They
run of
did
it
testing.
themselves.
Yeah, that's right.
and that video is somewhere online.
It is. Good old Tony Baxter. I could listen to him talk
Right.
all day.
Both him and Joe. Wow, what a
He essentially created that attraction.
Yes, and I got to meet him a few years back, and I thanked him for my childhood because of that, and
Yeah.
it was very emotional.
He's a good
which
guy.
is a weird thing to think about outside the confines of being a Disney history fan, but it was such an important ride to me. So seeing it, I mean, I cried again when the new one opened because it was so terrible, and I said, "What did they do?" And then they realized, I guess, the error of their ways and shut that down. I don't know how long it was.
It wasn't very long, but they
Look
essentially
it up.
they brought back Figment
They brought back, so now it is Journey into Imagination with Figment.
And so Figment has returned. You do kind of go through his house, but
And
yeah,
this is,
they brought him
do you have
back.
the dates of that?
Journey into Imagination. Do you want to guess the dates for that?
No, that's okay.
The original?
Yeah.
Well, it closed in 99, I believe. Is that true?
1983 to 1998.
Oh, okay.
Journey
I
into
might be thinking
your
of Horizons.
Journey into Your Imagination, 1999 to 2001.
Wow. It went longer than I thought.
Nice.
And
99
With
to
Figment is opened in 2002.
Hmm.
So there you go.
Um,
Where they at least try to.
they tried to, but I'm still not a fan
No.
of that because it's almost just like, again, and I've used this twice today now, like an insult for people that were the original fans. And a lot of people's complaints about that is that they took Figment, who in the original ride, yes, he was a little scamp sometimes, but he was childlike.
Curious. Yeah.
He was childlike and curious, and he wanted to do everything. He wanted to experience
was
everything.
very excited.
He was putting on makeup and a top hat for the theater thing.
wanted
he
to
wanted
go to
paint.
space,
He
too.
wanted to, yeah. He wasn't ever like an annoying nuisance,
not at
and
all.
that's what they turned him into in the current ride.
Yeah.
And
yeah, like especially like in the little pre-show part with Eric Idle, where he's
Yeah.
kind of like messing around.
And then, you
So-
know, they tried to save it by at the end, the very end of the ride, you're in that black area, and then whatever curtain drops. I don't know what
Yeah.
they do with it, but then there's all the
think it's
little
all
figments.
scrim that
Yeah,
it
It
scrim.
raises. Yeah, but-
And then there's all the little figments and singing the song at the end, Imagination, which again I cried at because
Yeah,
I was
they-
like,
they brought the song back, but
this attraction has made me cry many times over the years.
at least we can say that we've been on the original, which was
Yeah.
perfect.
And,
It was
you know,
wonderful.
who knows what the future holds. We all certainly were wondering and thought that something would be announced at the
Yes,
latest.
I know they've
D23
always got.
Expo.
There are plans somewhere in Imagineering where, like, what if we could do this?
Yeah.
So
I do appreciate that they have brought Figment back as sort of a mascot, which some people may only know him as that if they don't even ride that ride. because it's not test track or mission space.
And they brought him back in the form of a topiary as well.
Yes.
So that's fun.
because he used to be outside. The image works in a
Mm-hmm.
topiary. It is interesting to me that they have taken some liberties with Figment in his design in the new festival things. Like right now, the one that's out is very like Schoolhouse Rock type style of animation.
Gotta be careful with that.
Cat just almost fell in a box, so apologies for that if you could hear that noise.
That's
Never a dull moment around here. But there's been other versions of him that I don't like as much, but I get that they have different artists that want to.
Yeah, they're trying.
At least he's out there.
Yes, he is.
And that wraps my list up. Do you have any asterisks?
Well, I still have my
more?
fifth.
Oh, that's right.
We started with you.
Sorry.
And this one will not top this one. And this one actually might be considered another controversial one or an asterisk. Please go with me here on this one. But this one is Smugglers Run. Wait, what? I know, right? It just opened. It's amazing. The technology is fantastic. But let me talk to you a little bit about Smugglers Run.
I'm with you. I get it.
Oh, okay. But
Go ahead.
a couple of things about this one is, the theme parks are evolving and they are trying to include more interactivity in some of the attractions. And they have definitely done that here, where you essentially are piloting or gunning or engineering the Millennium Falcon. And you experience the attraction while also performing some tasks. But the level of interactivity that happens in theme parks, there's kind of a give and take. They're incorporating this, and with such things as Sorcerers in the Magic Kingdom or even the new Play Disney app within Batu, they have some interactive things that people can either choose to do or not do. But in this attraction, if you ride it, you essentially are doing it. You have to do it. And they are the level of enjoyment of the attraction is dependent upon your performing these functions. And if you think about the positioning of these functions that you have to perform, especially in the back row of the engineer, you essentially are turning your head away from what is happening, what you're seeing. And that's essentially, you're taking 1/3 of your guests and putting them at a disadvantage of the attraction because of what they have to do. Yeah, they could just kind of fumble around and do that, but from what I've heard, what the ride does is dependent upon you performing these functions. And you could also, take the grandmother factor, if you will. Like, would my grandmother know what to do here? I don't know. Some people, there are a lot of people that do not speak English, which is the language that it is told to us, and who may not understand what needs to be done.
That's true.
Yes, they do light up, and if things light up, yeah, you're probably prone to touch those things because you're kind of being asked to. But again, what I'm saying is by doing so, you're kind of turning your focus away from the action. And there's only so much action because the ride is only so long. Do you have any thoughts about this?
Well, similar to Mission Space where you have to press the buttons.
You don't have to, though.
But that's what I was just going to say. Like, nothing's going to depend on you pressing those buttons. You can just sit there and look at the screen.
I know that there was a fine line with what they were trying to do. I know that they wanted to have it so that if you didn't perform the functions, then your vehicle would not do what it should do. Like, you could crash. I think they've gotten away from that. You'll eventually go through the proceedings of what you need to go through, but at what enjoyment level?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I have heard that there is an autopilot that they can do for small
But
children.
they don't announce that.
They don't announce that, no. But if you have, well, I don't know. I guess it would be at the cast member's discretion, or you could perhaps ask someone.
I think it's only for those that know, who know to ask for it. So that.
Yeah.
I do know that in the gunner position, you could find that one button that's lit up and just press it and keep it pressed, and it'll keep shooting. But like the first time I rode it, no, pressed it, just as often as I could.
Yeah.
And my hand got tired as a result.
Well, I think I've said before when we were talking about Galaxy's Edge that when I was the engineer, I have very good peripheral vision, so I could see what was lit up, and
Right.
I didn't feel like it. I mean,
No.
it's very fast-paced anyway,
It is.
so I don't know if this is why they did it this way, but I think the idea is hopefully that it's like re-rideability, because it all depends on who you're with. It depends on how well you do it, what is going to happen on the,
Right.
out the window in front of you.
And please don't get me wrong. I very much enjoy this attraction.
I'm
It
not
is a
trying
lot of
to,
fun.
like,
I do love riding it. I cannot wait to go back and ride it again.
Yeah,
and
but
I'm
I totally
not
get what
saying
you're
it's
saying.
the worst ride. I'm just saying when you take something like the task that you need to perform and give a third of your audience a disadvantage over
Right.
everyone else, that's kind of an unfortunate thing, in my opinion.
And I saw someone say recently, I don't remember who this is, so apologies if I'm misquoting you, that the whole reason people like the Millennium Falcon was who was on it.
Oh, yeah.
And that is sort of like taken out of the
That's a good
equation.
point.
So yes, you
'Cause-
get to be on the Falcon, but you're by yourself doing some random
That's right.
mission that doesn't really affect you any.
It is a
So-
ship that has appeared in the most recent trilogy as a major character. It appeared in the movie Solo, and of course the original trilogy as well. When they announced that you get to ride the Millennium Falcon, that's a lot of people thought that's awesome because it's kind of like the signature ship in the Star
you're
Wars
kind of
universe.
picturing yourself riding with Chewie,
Chewie
or something,
or
and
Lando or Han or even Rey. It is still an incredibly fun attraction.
Yeah.
It's just you gotta.
I get it. That's kind of another
It's a weird
example of what could be. Like
yeah,
it
and
could've-
that's kind of what I'm going at.
And
for
I think
here.
once Rise of the Resistance opens,
Oh my
hold on, that'll be another whole thing. We have a question from the audience. Yes, sir.
Ooh, that would be fun.
Well, so if anyone couldn't hear that, Gio from the audience has said that he thinks they should add a Han Solo audio animatronic to tell you what to do.
That would be very interesting.
That would be interesting if he was riding with you. It would have to be in such a place that he wouldn't be able to be attacked by the people on the ride and touch him and
That's
whatever.
right.
But yeah, that's a good point, that it is kind of just a random person telling you what to do. I mean, he's not random now. We all know Hondo Ohnaka.
That's right. I think he's in it only for the profit, though.
He is. So yeah, no
So,
matter how well, I mean, don't worry about doing well on this because it's really just all going back to Hondo.
That's right.
So don't stress about it.
So yeah, I would definitely focus more on what's going on than necessarily performing your tasks. And unless you're the pilot, of course, you've got things that you really have to do, like take us into hyperspace.
That's true.
That would be fun, which I've actually never done.
All
But
right.
anyway, so that is mine. And once again, as I said, I do very much like that attraction. But I do actually have a few honorable mentions, if I may rattle
Make it
through them.
quick because
I will
we don't
try to
wanna
make it
drag
quick.
this on for.
When
part two.
Disneyland first opened, there were a couple of attractions that were a little wonky. Basically, when Disneyland Disneyland first opened in 1955, they were trying to, especially in the Tomorrowland area, trying to put as many attractions there as possible, just to kind of fill out the attraction count, if you will, and give people more to do. And one of those was the Phantom Boats, which is essentially a boat in the water with a motor and fins that made it look futuristic. But they were essentially they were in the lake all by themselves, kind of like where the submarine voyage is now. But they broke down very
I was
quickly,
just gonna
and
say, they did not work very well.
that attraction closed in 56. So did not even last a year. And then, if you may recall, pardon me, the Storybookland Canal Boats was not the first iteration of that attraction,
I
but
do
they had the
remember that.
Canal Boats of the World, which, I think Walt was definitely fascinated with miniatures, and he had seen this thing called Lilliputian Land somewhere else, and he was trying to have these little miniature things there, but they did not get quite built, and so it was just a little boat ride through mud.
Yeah, there's a lot of dirt, right?
Yeah, a lot of dirt at the beginning. So they actually closed it just a couple of months later before they were made it into the Storybookland Canal Boats that we now love, and is probably one of my all-time favorite attractions at Disneyland, if not my my favorite.
Yes.
We love that. So I just wanted to throw that in there. See if I could throw any of the others out here. Maybe I should. Maybe I shouldn't.
Well,
that's okay. You know, I'll throw in one. The Luigi's Flying Tires at California Adventure. I loved that attraction.
I thought about it, but I enjoyed it. So
I very much enjoyed it too. But once again, kind of like what I was saying with Smugglers Run, it was not very intuitive.
Yeah.
Guests did not understand it. Most guests would get into their tire and just not go anywhere because they didn't quite know how to make it work. And so if you have an attraction that could be fun, if guests can just figure it out, maybe you should go back to the drawing board.
And they did.
And they did. And
now we have Luigi's Rollicking Roadsters.
The Roadsters, which is a fun attraction.
That was fun.
Which is a lot of fun. And it
I
goes
like the
through
part at the end where they all do the dance and
yeah,
sing.
they have the
That's
choreography that it goes through, and so that's a fun one.
What's the best car?
the Sophia car.
Is it not the Geo car?
Wait, is there a Geo car?
Yes.
Oh, I've forgotten. It's been so long since I've been to Disneyland.
The only other thing I'll add here is the Astro Orbiters. If you may remember, at Disneyland, it used to be above the People Mover platform.
Well,
way
I don't
up high.
remember that because I was never there.
And then they decided for some reason to create New Tomorrowland in, I believe, 1998 and bring them much lower to the ground, much closer to the hub, interrupted by these strange rocks.
Well, they've just taken those rocks out. Did you see that?
Yeah, they're now just finally taking those out. But it's still not quite in the place where it should be, and so you're losing a lot of the effect when you ride that attraction because it was meant to be done way up high, which you can still do here at the Magic Kingdom, and I recommend you do.
I'm not a fan of that, but, you know.
That's fine.
I just don't like how it makes you feel like this.
That's called centrifugal force.
Okay. Well, anyway, we went on for longer than we thought.
Much longer. We
This
apologize.
definitely was more than 5 from each of us.
I actually do have more that I could list, but I'll
should
go ahead
write
and
a book.
yeah.
Just lightning speed. Just the
No,
names of the attractions.
no, because I would need to explain them.
No, these are the ones he needs to
Crush's coaster at Disneyland Paris.
Yeah.
I'll have to explain you later and things like that.
We
so.
can revisit this topic in the future when there's more
Yes.
attractions, perhaps. That
You
we
could have
don't
been
like.
so much more Crush's coaster. That's all I'll say.
Okay. Well, thanks for listening to us today ramble on about things we don't like and things that we do like, because we
that's
certainly
the thing.
remember the way things used to be in some of them. Not that we're expecting things not to change, but sometimes the changes have not been
We just
thought
like it
through.
when things are good.
That's true.
And sometimes
Who doesn't like good things?
they just make a slight mistake or an error in judgment and go a different way.
Yeah.
So we're just here to talk about that.
And with that, we will end Up the Waterfall episode 4.
That's
we
right.
invite you to subscribe on iTunes or your podcasting platform of choice.
Now available everywhere podcasts are.
That's right.
Now available everywhere you can find fine podcasts.
As well as what website?
Well, you can also head to youtube.com/Zannaland if you want to watch all of this stuff,
right.
which you might be watching right now.
That's right.
But you can subscribe and hit the notification bell, and then you'll know when we do a new upload.
That's right.
Which the podcasts are every Sunday. Christian and I randomly go in the parks and upload vlogs. Sometimes he'll do some solo ones.
Those are always fun. And actually, I
are
got
fun.
to join you all for
Yeah,
a
that's
recent
right,
one. So
for
that was
Food
fun,
Wine.
too.
We should have another video coming up soon involving Geo. So
That's right.
another
we might fill
character
in.
to add to our cast.
There he is.
Here he is. So you can also head to Zannaland.com to find out all of that information and links and all that good stuff.
That's right.
And we will see you next time up the waterfall.
Up the waterfall.
That is absolutely fantastic.
Well, that's only part of it. We got a big climatic scene.
But how could you top it?
Well, we set the place on fire, and we have our audience trapped down in this flaming city.
And how can they get out then?
Well, now you got into this mess by going down a waterfall. Now, how would you suppose we get them out of there?
By going up the waterfall?
That's right. Anything's possible in Disneyland.